At 8:23 p.m., exhausted single father and waiter Jake Turner served the city's ruthless CEO Amelia Grant, who was stranded after a major city event. She confessed her problem. Not a single room available. Feeling an unexpected kinship, Jake joked, "If you can't find a place, you could always move in with me and my kid." Amelia's intense eyes fixated on him. It was a throwaway comment, quickly forgotten. But at 7:02 a.m. the next morning, a sharp knock. She stood there, designer suitcase in hand. "You made an offer. I'm here to accept it." Who? Jake Turner's life was built on two things: tenacity and love. At 36, he was the sole anchor for his 7-year-old son, Leo. Their home was a cramped, two-bedroom apartment, low ceilings, perpetually humming refrigerator, but always filled with the scent of microwave popcorn and boundless affection. Jake wasn't always at the bottom of the ladder. He had been a brilliant, in-demand precision technician, running his own small, successful electronics repair shop. That all crumbled when his biggest client abruptly dissolved, taking Jake's business, his savings, and, ultimately, his marriage with it. His wife had simply left, choosing a life unburdened by financial struggle, leaving only a hastily scribbled note and a heartbroken 6-year-old boy. This trauma forced Jake into a relentless cycle. Daytime, fixing everything from toasters to industrial circuit boards in various small businesses. And nighttime, waiting tables at the local 24-hour diner. Money was perpetually tight, the old car a constant expense. But Jake maintained a ferocious, stubborn optimism. He shielded Leo from the financial strain, ensuring his son felt nothing but safety and unwavering love. The diner itself was a microcosm of his hard-won peace. It was where he could momentarily forget the bank notices and the mounting debt. Until Amelia Grant walked in. Amelia, 33, was more than a CEO. She was an enigma. The business press adored her ruthlessness and her flawless, glacial composure. She had doubled Grant Holdings' market value in 3 years, but she was rumored to be entirely humorless and incapable of human connection. Jake was one of the few who recognized her instantly from the impossibly large glass and steel billboards downtown. He knew exactly the kind of financial titan she was. Amelia was there because her board meeting had run until 1 a.m. and a massive, unexpected city event had rendered every major hotel fully booked. She was stranded, and to Amelia Grant, being stranded meant being vulnerable, a position she utterly despised. The other staff treated her with a terrified reverence, whispering frantically about avoiding eye contact. "Don't mess up her order," the manager had hissed at Jake. "She'll have you blacklisted faster than you can blink." But Jake served her naturally, addressing her as ma'am and treating her cheap tea refill with the same diligence as a fine wine service. This authenticity visibly rattled Amelia. She wasn't used to it. She was used to being feared, not merely served. As she prepared to leave, the confession slipped out, a moment of profound, career-damaging weakness. "It's strange, Mr. Turner. I control entire skylines, but tonight I truly have nowhere to lay my head." That was when Jake tossed out the anchor, his simple, absurd joke. "Worst case, move in with me and my kid. You know, we've got a couch, the apartment's not broken, mostly." Amelia allowed herself that brief, genuine smile, a highly unorthodox solution and a dangerous offer. Jake, still thinking it was a joke, leaned in conspiratorially. "Hey, we offer full coverage, unlimited cereal, all the retro Saturday morning cartoons, and mandatory hugs. That's pure, untapped luxury, Miss Grant." They both shared a moment of genuine, exhausted levity. Jake truly thought that was the end of the story, but as Amelia's sleek, black car sped away, her phone lit up with a cascading chain of security alerts. The breach at her penthouse was confirmed. It was precise, targeted, and deep. It wasn't a robbery. It was espionage. A rival, later identified as her CFO David, was attempting to destabilize her by digging into her private life, looking for any flaw, any leverage. Amelia realized with chilling certainty that every high-end location, every place she was expected to be, was already compromised or watched. Her power had made her a visible target. She needed true invisibility. And then the sound of Jake's honest, easy laughter, a sound she hadn't heard in years, replayed in her mind. His broken-down apartment, the place where she would never in a million years be expected to hide, was her only true sanctuary. Amelia's security detail had been scrambling all night. Her chief of staff, Marcus, called Jake's diner, speaking only in veiled threats and corporate jargon, demanding to know if a VIP package had been seen. Jake, recognizing the code words and realizing the gravity of her situation, had simply lied. "No, sir. We only serve regular people here." He was protecting her before he even knew he was protecting her. That single decision, protecting a near stranger from corporate wolves, was the first act of integrity that cemented Amelia's decision. Later, Amelia saw Leo's little drawing on the placemat, the crayon-drawn heart. She quickly snatched it up, folding it discreetly into her expensive wallet. It was the first non-monetary, non-business item she had carried in years. Ant, the titan of global real estate, standing on his doorstep with a silver Samsonite suitcase, was an immediate, dizzying reality check. Jake, wearing a stained technician's t-shirt, stood utterly dumbstruck. "Miss Grant, I was absolutely 100% joking. This is my apartment. It's small." Amelia stepped past him, her eyes scanning the cluttered living room, a mountain of unmatched socks, scattered Lego bricks, and a couch covered in a faded floral blanket. She set down her suitcase. "I wasn't, Jake." Her voice was firm. "This is a matter of security. Yours, technically, is the only untraceable address." Leo, hearing the unusual sound of a new voice in a rolling suitcase, wandered out, his hair tousled, wearing mismatched pajamas. He saw the elegant, sharp-dressed woman, and his eyes widened. "Daddy, who's the pretty lady with the big bag? Is she a secret agent?" Amelia's composure softened instantly. She dropped to one knee, a feat of balance in her tailored suit. "Someone who really, really needs a safe place to stay for a little while, young man. I promise to be very quiet." Jake knew he couldn't refuse. The desperation in her eyes was real, a raw, exposed nerve beneath the flawless makeup. He gave her Leo's room, insisting he and Leo would take the fold-out couch. Amelia protested weakly, but the stress had drained her. In the tiny, overheated apartment, Amelia sat on the rickety armchair, the one with the broken armrest that Jake had patched with duct tape. She actually laughed, a soft surprise sound. "It's been a while since I lived somewhere real, Jake, somewhere without a fingerprint scanner and 3 security layers." The cultural clash was immediate and jarring. Amelia attempted to navigate the shower, only to scald herself because she couldn't figure out the antiquated faucet. She stared in confusion at the outdated cathode ray TV, unsure how to change the channel from the incessant cartoon reruns. Jake, by contrast, found serving her coffee in a mismatched mug while talking about his mortgage payments strangely liberating. He was being seen, not judged. Leo, in his pure 7-year-old innocence, became the emotional bridge. He immediately trusted her, showed her his prized dinosaur collection, and drew her a portrait. Lady with long hair, which he insisted she carry. Amelia, the woman whose existence was defined by quarterly reports, found herself reading bedtime stories, stumbling over the voices of cartoon animals, and genuinely enjoying it. That silent, intense smile she'd worn at the diner was now a frequent, visible expression of pleasure. When Jake pressed her gently about the security risk, Amelia finally confessed the full story. The CFO, David, had been leveraging their high-profile merger to plant deep-cover surveillance in her life. The final straw was a threat to publish deeply personal, falsified medical records, a move designed to crash the stock and force her removal. "I needed to vanish," she explained, her gaze fixed on the frayed edge of the carpet. "And your world, Jake, is completely off the grid. So yes, your broken apartment is the only truly secure place I have left." The situation was far from calm. Corporate security was in a frenzy. Amelia's chief of staff, Marcus, was fielding aggressive inquiries from the press, the board, and rival executives. The media narrative escalated. "Missing CEO. Is Amelia Grant having a breakdown? Or is she being held against her will by an unknown man?" The board threatened intervention. Jake was suddenly dragged into a massive corporate maelstrom he couldn't possibly understand. He started receiving menacing, untraceable calls. One night, a shadowy figure tried to slip a burner phone under his door, a clear attempt to contact Amelia and lure her out. Amelia acted swiftly, calling a brief, pre-recorded press statement that went viral. "Mr. Jake Turner did not hide me. I asked him for refuge. He is a man of honor, and I will not permit his reputation to be tarnished by corporate innuendo. Her public defense immediately shut down the initial wave of scandalous speculation, but it confirmed the crisis was real. During these tense days, the small moments were everything. Jake's clumsy, hearty breakfasts, eggs slightly burnt, but always exactly what she needed. Amelia, who had barely cooked a microwave meal in her life, sheepishly admitted she had no idea how to make a cup of instant coffee. Jake taught her. They shared jokes over the chipped ceramic mugs. They argued about the appropriate level of sugar in Leo's oatmeal. They were playing house, completely by accident, under the terrifying shadow of corporate war. Amelia, standing in the cramped kitchen, was struggling to open a jar of pickles for Leo's sandwich. Her usual staff would have opened it instantly. Jake walked up behind her, gently placed his hands over hers, and twisted. The jar opened with a soft pop. Amelia didn't pull away. The moment wasn't romantic. It was a pure, visceral recognition of reliance and shared domesticity. She kept Leo's drawing, Lady with Long Hair, in her sleek work notebook, using it as a bookmark in her strategy section. Every time she read about her enemies, she saw a child's unwavering trust, reminding her of what she was fighting for. The sense of safety was a cruel illusion. One night around 11:30 p.m., when Jake was finally relaxing, the gentle sound of Amelia typing quietly in Leo's room. The distant sound of a passing siren, he saw it. The flicker of the hallway light, followed by the reflection of a man staring through his tiny, slightly grimy kitchen window. The man was too still, too focused. This was not a random passerby. Jake's heart hammered a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He immediately shouted, hitting the kitchen light switch, and the figure outside bolted, disappearing into the complex's narrow gangway. Amelia rushed out, her face stripped of all color. "What was that? Was it them?" Her voice was thin, edged with deep, long-buried trauma. She confessed that years ago, when she took over the company, her car had been tampered with. She'd received death threats. The fight for power was lethal, and she had forgotten what true, uncompromised vulnerability felt like. Jake took charge, his technician's mind clicking into hyper-efficient mode. He swiftly checked Leo, who was blissfully asleep. He then secured the few windows, placing a chair under the front doorknob. He insisted Amelia sleep, but she refused, instead sitting opposite him, watching him keep vigil all night. Amelia watched the single dad, who should have been sleeping before his 6 a.m. shift, risking everything to protect her from threats that dwarfed his entire financial world. She saw his steady hands, his calm demeanor, and the utter lack of panic. Her eyes burned with unshed tears. No one, not her high-paid security team, not her manipulative ex-fiancé, had ever simply protected her like this. The situation became untenable the next morning. The tabloids exploded with surveillance photos, blurry but undeniable shots of Amelia entering and leaving Jake's apartment building. The headlines were savage. CEO scandal. Grant found hiding in lover's slum. The board, already nervous, seized the opportunity. A major shareholder called Amelia, his tone final. "You have compromised the company's reputation. If you don't step down, we will convene an emergency vote and forcibly remove you. You have 2 hours." Amelia collapsed onto Jake's couch, her facade finally completely crumbling. She wept, hard, deep sobs that shook her body. The CEO was gone. Only a terrified, exhausted woman remained. Jake sat beside her, gently placing his arm around her. "You can stay here as long as you need, Amelia. Let them do their worst. We're not afraid of them, and we're not leaving." The mechanic's revelation. As Amelia calmed down, Jake examined the windowsill again. This time, he noticed something the police would have missed: a trace of fine, metallic powder embedded in the old paint. He recognized the residue instantly. It was a specialist-grade lubricant used only for high-resolution, long-range optical equipment. And there was something else, a tiny, almost microscopic indentation near the latch. He realized the observer wasn't just watching, he was trying to compromise the lock, waiting for the right moment. Jake's eyes narrowed. The person who did this, they're a technician, a good one too. He used his knowledge, his former life, to trace the source of the powder through online supplier databases, eventually linking it to a specific small-time surveillance company. That company was owned by the CFO's assistant, a nervous man named Tom. The elaborate surveillance was an amateur hour job, high-tech gear, but deployed clumsily. Amelia and Jake, working in Jake's kitchen with a cheap laptop and a magnifying glass, interrogated Tom's digital footprint. They found a series of cryptic, panicked texts between Tom and David, the CFO. The final message was damning. A corrupted file showing CFO David's attempt to electronically forge Amelia's signature on a massive illegal loan guarantee designed to look like her final ruinous act of desperation. The boardroom confrontation. They had the truth, but they had minutes. The board meeting to forcibly remove Amelia was starting. "We go now," Amelia stated, her tears dried, her resolve steely. "I am not going to let them take my company based on a technical lie." Jake, still wearing his slightly oil-stained mechanic's jacket, didn't hesitate. He bundled Leo into the old sedan and they sped downtown. When they entered the monolithic, silent lobby of Grant Holdings, the whispers turned into a deafening chorus. "The slum lover has arrived. Is that the kid?" Security guards, under the explicit order of the interim chairman, blocked their path to the executive elevator. "Sir, I must insist you wait downstairs. This floor is restricted." Jake, about to submit to his conditioned humility, felt a small, determined hand squeeze his. Leo looked up at him, his small face serious. "Daddy, don't let them talk to you like that. You fixed the world for the pretty lady." Amelia stepped forward, her hand resting firmly on Jake's shoulder, a gesture that defied all corporate protocol. Her voice was amplified by the sheer force of her presence. "He saved me," she declared, addressing the gaping employees and the red-faced security chief. "He protected my child, and unlike my own executives, he found the truth that was hidden right under your polished noses." She marched through the security line, Jake and Leo flanking her like a small, unexpected army. In the mahogany-paneled boardroom, Amelia presented the hard evidence of David's espionage and fraud. The board members were stunned. Then Jake stepped forward. He didn't speak about finance, he spoke about systems integrity. He detailed the specific technical vulnerabilities David exploited, the why and the how, in language that was precise, irrefutable, and exposed the CFO's methodology completely. He was suddenly not the waiter. He was the expert. The board was speechless. David, the CFO, was arrested on the spot. The interim chairman stared at Jake, his eyes wide. "Mr. Turner, you truly possess this technical expertise?" Amelia placed a hand on Jake's arm, her gaze burning with public pride. "He has more professional skill and infinitely more integrity than half the compromised people in this room." Jake felt a deep, unfamiliar flush of pride. He had fought their war and won. As they left the boardroom, Amelia stopped at the elevator. She took out her personal high-security elevator key card, a card that accessed every private research and executive floor in the building, and placed it into Jake's hand. "Keep it," she said, her voice soft but absolute. "From now on, Jake, I want you to walk where I walk." The dust settled, but the emotional landscape of their lives had shifted forever. Amelia temporarily retained her CEO title, but the near-death experience of losing everything had changed her priorities. She had tasted the fierce, uncompromised loyalty of Jake's world, and her own felt suddenly sterile. She confessed to Jake, "I've never truly had a place that felt like home. Not my penthouse, not my family's estate, until your apartment." Her voice was barely a whisper, yet it was the most profound statement she had ever made. Jake's heart soared. The powerful CEO, the unreachable woman, was acknowledging that his humble world was her peace. In the weeks that followed, their relationship became a chaotic, beautiful blend of worlds. Leo demanded Amelia read his bedtime stories, which often involved her ad-libbing complex business metaphors into children's fables. Amelia, using her considerable organizational skills, helped Jake overhaul his collapsed business records, creating a professional infrastructure for his repair work. Jake, in turn, challenged her. He insisted she take weekends off, dragging her to the park with Leo, forcing her to trade tailored suits for worn jeans. He cooked for her, nourishing her with simple, honest food, a stark contrast to the sterile, high-end business dinners she typically endured. Amelia, the Iron Lady, laughed, struggled to make coffee, and found herself arguing happily with Jake over whose turn it was to fold the laundry. They were accidentally, perfectly forming a family unit. A minor but crucial conflict arose. Amelia's renovated penthouse was finally ready. Impenetrable security, flawless aesthetics. She announced hesitantly that she needed to move out to maintain the facade of professionalism. Leo cried hard. "I don't want you to go, Lady Amelia. We need you for cartoons." Amelia held him, her own eyes glistening. "I don't want to go either, sweetie," she admitted honestly. Jake looked at them, the knot of fear tightening in his own chest. He wasn't afraid of the CEO's power. He was terrified of losing the warmth she had brought, the unexpected, quiet feeling of being a complete family again. One evening, while Jake was attempting to repair a sputtering ceiling fan, the old fuse box, a symbol of the apartment's persistent shortcomings, blew, plunging the kitchen into total darkness. Amelia, calm now, located the emergency lamp. She laughed, a genuine, delighted sound. "Well, I suppose this isn't exactly in line with CEO standards of living, is it?" Jake climbed down from the ladder, his face streaked with dust. He looked at her, illuminated by the single, dim lamp. "But it's real, Amelia, and I've seen you smile more here in 2 weeks than I ever saw you smile in any magazine." Amelia paused, realizing the undeniable truth. In his humble chaos, she was herself. Their relationship deepened further during a critical board meeting. The stubborn minority shareholders, still reeling from the CFO scandal, made a final push to sideline Amelia by demanding she hire a qualified big-name consulting firm to vet her new protocols, a clear attempt to undermine her confidence. Sarah, Amelia's chief of staff, looked stressed. Amelia, however, looked at the small paracord bracelet Leo had made her and smiled. She surprised the board by announcing the immediate hiring of an external consultant, but not a firm. "I'm hiring Jake Turner," she stated simply. "His analysis of systems integrity in digital forgery is unparalleled. He starts tomorrow, directly reporting to me." The board sputtered. "The waiter, the man who lives in the—" Amelia cut them off with chilling clarity. "The man who prevented a multi-million-dollar fraud and understands vulnerability better than any high-price firm. His fee will be paid in full." She was not just protecting him, she was elevating him, cementing his value publicly. Leo presented Amelia with a third, even more elaborate handmade paracord bracelet, a triple braid of blue, green, and red. "It's super strength," he declared. "It's so you can be part of our team forever." Amelia accepted it, tying it immediately around her wrist, refusing to let Jake help, ensuring she learned how to do it herself. That night, she asked Jake to teach her how to change a fuse. She was learning to repair his world, just as he had repaired hers. The bracelet wasn't just a gift, it was a silent promise of permanence. 1 month later, Amelia held a press conference that transcended typical corporate reporting. Standing before a massive screen displaying a new company charter, she announced not just a profit strategy, but a complete structural overhaul of Grant Holdings. "We are shifting our entire corporate ethos," she stated, her voice steady and powerful. "We will now operate based on radical transparency and integrity. Lessons learned, not in a boardroom, but from the example of a man who saved me with nothing but his honesty." Jake and Leo, dressed in their best, sat beaming in the front row. The media frenzy was aimed at them, but now it was a gaze of respect, not scandal. After the conference, Amelia bypassed the private executive lounge and took Jake and Leo into the rooftop garden. The chill whined a final cleansing moment of clarity. She turned to Jake, her eyes reflecting the dazzling cityscape, the domain she commanded. "Jake, that night at the diner, you made a joke. You said I could move in." Jake blushed deeply, the memory still fresh. "Yeah, that was definitely a joke, Amelia. An exhausted, stupid joke." Amelia looked at him, not with the calculating gaze of the CEO, but with the open heart of a woman who had finally found her true home. "I'm not asking as a joke, Jake. I'm asking you now. Can it be real?" She stepped closer, closing the distance between their two worlds. "Can we be a family? Not in your apartment, not in my penthouse, but somewhere that's ours." Leo, sensing the shift, ran up and took both their hands, joining them in a circle. "We can be a family, right, Daddy?" Amelia's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "If your dad finally says yes, sweetie." Jake looked at Amelia, the powerful woman, the vulnerable refugee, the protective co-parent. She was the one who had pulled him from the shadow of his own professional failure and made him realize he was worthy of a great life. He brought their joined hands to his heart, his voice thick with emotion. "You already live in our hearts, Amelia," he managed to say. "The door to our life is open. Forever." Amelia embraced them both, holding the single dad and his son tightly. In that moment, she wasn't the CEO of Grant Holdings. She was simply Amelia, a woman who had finally found refuge, not from an enemy, but from her own loneliness. A few months later, Jake and Amelia are eating breakfast with Leo in their brand new shared kitchen. It's spacious, functional, and warm. Amelia is still struggling with the coffee maker, resulting in their happy morning arguments. Leo's blue-green-red paracord bracelet is proudly displayed on Amelia's wrist. On the refrigerator, a new large drawing is taped up, featuring 3 stick figures holding hands under a massive sun, captioned simply, "Our new family." He made a tired throwaway joke. She took it as a solemn promise, and together, in the chaos of life and the calm of a small, cluttered apartment, they built a home more solid than any skyscraper. If this story warmed your heart and proved that integrity beats status every single time, don't forget to subscribe to NL Touching Stories. Your support keeps these impossible fairy tales alive.